The laugh echoed across the water like a slap. It wasn't a laugh of joy. It wasn't the kind that bubbles up when someone tells a good joke or when children splash each other in the shallow end. No, this was the kind of laugh that's meant to be heard, calculated, aimed, the kind a woman uses when she wants everyone within earshot to understand exactly who she thinks is beneath her. And she aimed it at me. I was standing at the edge of my pool in my backyard at my party, holding a tray of lemonade glasses when I heard it. My daughter-in-law Vanessa was leaning against a lounge chair in her white cover-up, whispering something to her mother, and then came that laugh. She caught my eye for just a moment, long enough. Then she looked away, lifting her sunglasses with one perfectly manicured finger, like I wasn't worth the full weight of her gaze. I set the lemonade tray down on the folding table, slowly, carefully. And I smiled. Not because I was embarrassed, not because I was going to let it go, but because I already knew something Vanessa didn't, something that had been quietly arranging itself for weeks, like pieces on a chessboard, waiting for the right moment to fall into place. And that moment, I realized, was coming very soon. My name is Carol Whitfield. I am 63 years old. I have raised 2 sons largely on my own after my husband Raymond passed when the boys were teenagers. I worked 31 years as an office administrator at a law firm, saved every dollar I could, and when I retired, I bought a house in a quiet neighborhood in Tucson with a pool in the backyard. It wasn't a grand house. The tiles were a little dated. The deck needed resealing every few years. But it was mine, and I loved it with every fiber of who I was. My son Daniel married Vanessa 6 years ago. I tried. Lord knows I tried. I brought her flowers the first time Daniel brought her home. I offered to help plan the wedding. I sent birthday cards, Christmas gifts, invited them for Sunday dinners. Every attempt was met with the same thin-lipped smile and the distant politeness you'd offer a stranger on an elevator. Over time, I learned that Vanessa came from a wealthy family, old money, the kind that whispers rather than speaks, that judges square footage and zip codes and the thread count of your tablecloths. To Vanessa, I was a widow in a modest house who served store-bought pie and used paper towels as napkins at dinner. She tolerated me because Daniel loved me, but she never once let me forget what she thought of me. The comments started small. "Oh, Carol, you've done so much with so little," said sweetly, like a compliment. "Daniel tells me you used to work in an office, how practical." Emphasis on used to, as though work were something to be ashamed of. And then there were the glances at the furniture, at the dishes, at the backyard, that quiet inventory of everything she found lacking. I am not a confrontational person. Raymond used to say I was the most patient woman he'd ever known, and I suppose he was right. I absorbed it all. Smiled, redirected, changed the subject, kept the peace for Daniel's sake because Daniel was happy, and a mother's love means sometimes you swallow things whole. But the pool party was Vanessa's idea of a joke. She had planned a gathering at what she called a proper venue, a country club her family belonged to for the 4th of July. She'd mentioned it on a call with Daniel in front of me, pointedly not extending an invitation, then added, "Of course, your mother could host something small at her place if she wants, something casual." The way she said casual made it sound like she'd said pitiful. Daniel, sweet and oblivious as ever, lit up. "Mom, would you? The kids would love the pool." What could I say? I said yes. So I planned it. I bought good food, not extravagant, but real. Marinated chicken, fresh corn, a watermelon from the farmer's market, 2 homemade pies. I strung lights around the patio. I borrowed an extra table from my neighbor June. I cleaned that pool until it sparkled like glass. Vanessa arrived 45 minutes late with her mother, Patricia, and her sister, Brooke, all 3 of them dressed like they were attending a garden party at a British embassy. They surveyed the backyard in that way. They had that slow, scanning look that takes everything in and finds it wanting. Patricia made a comment about the charming older tiles. Brooke asked if the water was heated. Vanessa just smiled. It was when I brought out the lemonade from scratch, with fresh mint I'd grown in a pot on the windowsill, that the laugh happened. I don't know what she whispered to her mother. I don't need to know. The laugh told me everything. I set the tray down. I smiled. Because 2 weeks prior, I had received a phone call. The call came from a woman named Susan Alcott, a real estate attorney in Phoenix. She'd been trying to reach me for nearly a month, she said, apologizing for the delay. Her office had the wrong number on file. She represented the estate of a man named Gerald Whitfield. My husband Raymond's brother. Gerald, who had moved to Arizona 30 years ago to work in mining development. Gerald, who had never married, never had children. Gerald, who Raymond had spoken of warmly but who had drifted to the edge of our family's orbit over the decades, appearing occasionally at Christmas with a cactus-patterned tie and dusty boots, always a little rough around the edges, always a little hard to read. Gerald had passed in February, quietly in his home outside Scottsdale. And he had left everything to me. I sat down when Susan said the number, then I stood up, then I sat down again. I asked her to repeat it. She did. Gerald had spent 30 years in mining development at a time when the Arizona land market was quietly, stubbornly going up. He had bought parcels. He had held them. He had sold a few at exactly the right moments. He had lived simply, spent almost nothing, and when he died, he left behind a trust worth just over $4 million. To me, his brother's wife, the widow who sent him Christmas cards every year without fail, who called on his birthday even when he forgot hers, who mailed him pictures of Daniel and his brother Marcus growing up, because she thought it mattered that someone kept the family threads alive even when they frayed. Apparently, it had mattered to Gerald very much. Susan walked me through the paperwork over 3 subsequent calls. I told no one, not my sons, not my neighbor June, no one. I am, by nature, a private person, and something in me wanted to sit with it first, to understand it, to feel it settle into me before I let the world react to it. I thought about Vanessa's laugh before it even happened, in a way. I thought, there will be a moment, there is always a moment, and when it comes I will be ready. After the pool party, after the guests had gone, after the paper plates were in the bin, and the lights were unplugged, and the pool sat still and dark under the Arizona stars, Daniel called. "Mom, I'm sorry," he said. I noticed Vanessa and her mom being a little. "It's fine, sweetheart." "It's not fine, I'm going to talk to her." "Daniel," I said, "before you do, can you come see me? This weekend, if possible, bring Vanessa." A pause. "Everything okay?" "Everything is fine, there's just something I'd like to share with both of you." He came on Saturday. Vanessa arrived in linen trousers and a silk blouse, overdressed as always, her expression carrying that particular flavor of martyrdom she wore whenever Daniel insisted on a visit she'd rather skip. She sat across from me at the kitchen table, the same table with the small burn mark on one corner from a candle accident years ago, the table she'd once described as very vintage, with a tone that meant the opposite. I made coffee. I brought out cups, real ceramic ones, not the ones I usually used for guests, but my good ones, a set Raymond had bought me for our 20th anniversary. I sat down. I folded my hands. "I wanted to share some news," I said. I told them about Gerald, about the call from Susan, about the trust. I told them the number plainly because there was no point in dressing it up. The kitchen went very quiet. Daniel blinked. He looked at me. He looked at the table. He said, "Mom," in a voice I hadn't heard since he was 12 years old, and I told him his father was sick. Vanessa said nothing, but her face, that carefully composed, perpetually polite, faintly superior face, went through something extraordinary. I watched it happen in real time, like weather changing. The brow that had been lightly arched flattened. The jaw, usually held just so, went slack for just a moment before she caught it. Her eyes, which had barely met mine all morning, were now fixed on me with an attention she had never once paid me in 6 years. "I've already spoken with a financial advisor," I continued calmly, "and with Susan, the estate attorney. The process will take a few more months to complete, but the funds are secure. I've decided I'll be moving. Not far. I've found a property I like in Scottsdale. A newer home, larger, with a pool, of course." I picked up my coffee cup. "A proper one," I added, and I took a sip. What followed was a conversation I won't recount in full, because some of it was Daniel crying happy tears and hugging me so hard I could feel every year of missing his father in his arms, and that part belongs only to us. Some of it was Vanessa finding her voice and offering warmth that she'd never offered before, and I watched her try. I'll give her that, watched her reach for something genuine and find mostly performance, though perhaps, somewhere beneath the performance, a small seed of actual feeling. I am not a vengeful person. I want to be clear about that. I did not arrange any of this to humiliate Vanessa. Life arranged it, as life tends to do when you treat it honestly and keep showing up for the people who matter even when there's no obvious reward. But I will admit, I thought of that laugh when I walked through the Scottsdale property for the first time. The pool was larger than mine. The tiles were new. The deck was travertine. There was a pergola with climbing jasmine, and when I stood beside the water in the afternoon light, it was turquoise and still and quiet. I thought of the way she'd looked at my backyard like it was something to be embarrassed about. I thought of charming older tiles, and something casual, and the slow inventory of everything she'd found lacking. Then I let it go, because the thing about carrying dignity quietly for years is that when it finally surfaces, it needs no performance. It simply is, and that, I think, is its own particular kind of power. I moved into the Scottsdale house in October. June helped me pack because that is what good neighbors do. I kept my kitchen table, the one with the burn mark, because some things you don't replace. You carry them forward. Daniel and the grandchildren visited for Thanksgiving. We ate around that same table, in a new dining room with new light coming through new windows. The kids swam in the pool afterward, shrieking and laughing, the sound bouncing off travertine and jasmine and the wide Arizona sky. Vanessa helped with the dishes. She didn't say much. But at one point, standing at the sink with a towel in her hands, she turned to me and said quietly, without her mother or anyone else nearby, "You're remarkable, Carol. I don't think I've said that. I should have said it sooner." I looked at her for a moment, really looked. She meant it, or she meant as much of it as she was capable of meaning, which is perhaps all any of us can offer. "Thank you, Vanessa," I said. I took the towel from her hands, folded it over the oven handle, and walked out to watch my grandchildren in the pool. The water caught the last of the evening light and held it, golden, trembling, beautiful, and I stood there in the warmth of it, a woman who had worked hard and loved faithfully and waited patiently, and I thought, Raymond would have loved this. And that, more than the money, more than the house, more than any of it, that was the thing that finally, fully made me smile.